Throughout the histories of Arda, there have been many strongholds that have held against the forces of darkness throughout the ages, be that for the elves, men, dwarves, or other races trying to hold back the force of the shadow. Many of the greatest and mightiest battles have taken place involving these locations, and today we're going to shed some light on some of the finest citadels erected by the fair elves, and their importance during the constant wars against the evils that have plagued Middle-earth since time immemorial. Greetings all, I'm your guide, the Archivist. Today we look at the fortresses of the elves, some of their significance in the histories of Middle-earth and beyond, and their final fates on the face of the world. The Grey Havens. The Grey Havens, also known as Mithlond, was an enchanting elvish port town situated on the Gulf of Lune within the elven realm of Lindon in Middle-earth. Having withstood the tumult of the War of Wrath, Mithlond served as the principal elven settlement to the west of the Misty Mountains before the establishment of Eregion and Rivendell. Even as the elves dwindled in numbers during the Third Age following the death of Gil-galad, the Grey Havens remained a prominent coastal town and authorised departure point of elven ships to the Undying Lands and Amon. Despite its status as a major port, by the late Third Age, the Grey Havens had a sparse population, comparable to Rivendell and northeastern Mirkwood. This esteemed haven was established on the onset of the Second Age by the surviving elves of Beleriand, who elected to remain in Middle-earth after the battles against Morgoth. The Grey Havens were frequently visited from the west by the Númenóreans, and the Veintur being the first to re-establish contact in SA 600 after the surviving Edain of Beleriand departed for Númenor in SA 32. In SA 1700, Tar Minas dispatched substantial fleets from Númenor to the Havens, repelling the forces of Sauron that had besieged them during the War of the Elves and Sauron. Following the War of the Last Alliance, many of the Noldor and Sindar residing in the Havens set sail for Valinor, leaving the cities under the stewardship of Círdan. In TA 1000, the Astari arrived in Middle-earth, and it was here that Círdan entrusted Narya, the Elven Ring of Fire, to Gandalf. During the War of the Ring, Galdor of the Havens was among the members of the Council of Elrond. After the defeat of Sauron and the ascension of Aragorn II Elessar, Gandalf, Galadriel and Elrond departed for a man from the Grey Havens, accompanied by the ring-bearers Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins. Years later, Samwise Gamgee also left for Oman, being a ring-bearer briefly. The Grey Havens endured into the Fourth Age under Círdan, yet its population waned alongside the dwindling presence of Middle Elves in Middle-earth. It remains uncertain what transpired to the Elves of Middle-earth in the early Fourth Age and how long Círdan or his remaining kin resided at the Havens and continued crafting the grand ships that bore the Elves to the Blessed Realm. Barad Eithel. The stronghold of Barad Eithel served as the main fortress and capital of the realm of Fingolfin and Fingon during its existence. Positioned in the mountainous eastern foothills of the Erod Wethrin in Ethel Sirion, the source of the River Sirion, just outside Hithlum, Barad Eithel overlooked a pass into Hithlum, the realm of Fingolfin. Despite enduring multiple attacks and sieges by the forces of Morgoth during the First Age, it stood firm and guarded the passes into Hithlum, maintaining the security of the region. During the siege of Angband, Barad Eithel played a crucial role in the defence of the Noldor, with elven cavalry patrolling the surrounding fields. However, the plain surrounding Barad Eithel was devastated during the Dagor Bracolach, and the fortress faced fierce assaults by Orc armies. Despite these challenges, it remained steadfast in its defence. Tragedy struck when Fingolfin, the High King of the Noldor, was lost in despair after the plains were overrun, leading to his son Fingon taking up his rule. Subsequent attacks by Morgoth's forces were repelled, and Barad Eithel continued to play a vital role in the defence of the Western armies during the conflict with Morgoth. Ultimately, the fate of Barad Eithel during the Nernieth Anoediad remains unknown, but the destruction of Fingon's realm and the occupation of Hithlum indicate that the fortress at Ethel Sirion may have been captured or destroyed. By the conclusion of the First Age, it is likely that Fingolfin's mountain fortress, if not in the hands of the Orcs, would have fallen into ruin due to the events of that tumultuous era. Caras Galadhon. The ancient records reveal that Caras Galadhon was the first magnificent fortress, serving as the chief city of Lothlorien, situated at the heart of the entire woodland. Positioned in the Nath of Lorien, the central region of the Sylvan Elven realm, this fortress was constructed amidst the Malorn trees bestowed upon Galadriel by Gil-galad. It was notably the dwelling place of Celeborn and Galadriel. The circular layout of Caras Galadhon spanned approximately 3,000 feet from east to west and was enclosed by a wall of great earth, fortified by a substantial moss-covered moat. Moreover, a lengthy stone road outside the foss extended for many miles around the western perimeter of the city. Access to the city was granted through grand gates that faced southwest. The city was adorned with malon trees, amongst which the elves resided in flets atop the trees. Situated at the city's core, on the largest malon tree, was the flet of Celeborn and Galadriel, along with the chamber of Celeborn. Among the significant elements of the city were Galadriel's garden and her mirror, located in the southeastern quarter, which are prominently featured in the film adaptations and are repeatedly referenced. Historical accounts suggest that the construction of the city was likely initiated by the Sylvan-speaking Nandor elves, who initially inhabited the forest of Lorien during the years of the trees, under the starlight, and was possibly completed by the subsequent Sindarin lords of the city. Amdir and his son Amroth were succeeded by Celeborn and his spouse, Galadriel, who transformed the city into a serene yet secluded elven sanctuary. During the War of the Ring, the Fellowship of the Ring journeyed through Lorien to Caras Galadhon, where they encountered the Lord and Lady of the Galadrim. At the time of the siege of Minas Tirith, Lorien itself faced 3 sieges by Dol Guldur. In the Fourth Age, following Galadriel's departure from Lorien, Caras Galadhon was governed solely by Celeborn, serving as the capital of a Lorien that now encompassed both banks of the Anduin River. However, not long after, Celeborn himself departed to reside in Rivendell, leading to the city's abandonment. The circumstances surrounding this event remain unclear, particularly given that most of Lorien's inhabitants were Sylvan elves, and likely not predisposed to depart Middle-earth so soon after Sauron's downfall. Rivendell. Rivendell, also known as Imladris in Sindarin, was the name of a serene elven settlement in eastern Eriador and the surrounding valley. Established by Elrond Half-Elven, it initially served as a stronghold and refuge during the elves' early conflict with Sauron in the Second Age. Transitioning into the Third Age, it became a well-known peaceful sanctuary for the wandering elves, rangers of the north and other travellers. Some referred to it as the last homely house in the east of the civilized lands of Eriador, or the first homely house west of the wildlands of Rhovanion over the Misty Mountains. Nestled in a tranquil, secluded valley at the edge of a narrow gorge of the River Brunnen, Rivendell was cleverly concealed within the moorlands and foothills of the Misty Mountains. One of the primary routes to Rivendell passed through the nearby ford of Brunnen. Established during the War of the Elves and Sauron by Elrond, son of Eärendil, Rivendell was a response to the devastation wrought by Sauron in Eregion. Following the destruction of Eregion, Elrond, along with the refugees, was compelled to seek refuge northward in Rivendell or Imladris. Subsequently, the valley became the site of a fortified sanctuary bearing the same name. Although Sauron discovered and laid siege to the valley, he retreated upon the arrival of the Númenóreans. After the formation of the last alliance of elves and men, the forces of Gil-galad and Elendil assembled in Imladris to prepare for war and then journeyed over the high pass southeast to what would become Dagorlad. In the aftermath of the disaster of Gladden Fields, the sole surviving son of Isildur, Valandil, was nurtured in Elrond's abode in Rivendell until he was ready to assume the throne 8 years later. During the rise of Angmar in the 14th century of the Third Age, Rivendell once again came under siege from TA 1356 to TA 1409. The siege was broken by reinforcements from Lothlorien, leading to the repulsion and subjugation of Angmar for a period. Nonetheless, in TA 1974, Arthedain fell to Angmar. Elrond then dispatched Glorfindel and a group of elves to join forces with the armies of Eärnil II and Círdan, ultimately defeating Angmar for the good at the Battle of Fornost. Following the fall of Angmar, the heirs of Isildur sought shelter in Rivendell. During the quest of Erebor, Bilbo Baggins and the company of Thorin sought respite in Rivendell. Elrond interpreted the mysterious instructions inscribed in moon letters on Thror's map, guiding the party on entering the lonely valley after it had been claimed by Smaug. After their quest, both Bilbo and Gandalf returned to Rivendell. Years later, Frodo Baggins and his hobbit companions made their way to Rivendell, where they reunited with Bilbo, who had retired there after celebrating his 11th birthday. Several other elves, dwarves, and men also converged on the valley for separate undertakings, ultimately leading to the formation of the Fellowship of the Ring, following the decisive Council of Elrond. Elrond departed the Valley of Rivendell in TA 3021, marking the end of the Third Age. Afterwards, Rivendell was for a time the resting place of his sons Elladan and Elrohir, and also of Celeborn. It is untold when the valley was finally abandoned. Elven King's Halls. The Elven King's Halls were located within a cave system in northern Mirkwood, serving as the residence for King Thranduil and many of the Elves of Mirkwood during a significant portion of the Third Age and onwards into the Fourth Age. Situated just inside the eastern border of Mirkwood along the northern bank of the Forest River, the expansive cave complex comprised numerous passages and spacious halls, distinguished for its superior safety compared to the goblin tunnels within the Misty Mountains. While the majority of the elves resided in the woods, the King's Halls doubled as his palace, treasure repository, and a stronghold for the elves during times of peril. The entry to the halls was guarded by massive stone doors imbued with magical protection. The grand throne room of Thranduil was housed within a cavernous hall, adorned with pillars hewn from solid rock. Lower levels accommodated prisoner cells, while the deepest recesses of the caves hosted the king's storerooms, strategically situated over an underground stream, enabling the effortless transportation of supplies to the Forest River through a gate sealed by a portcullis. Around TA 1050, a looming shadow began to envelop Greenwood, prompting its renaming to Mirkwood. Consequently, King Thranduil led his people to the northeast region of the forest, where he established a fortified complex and a series of grand subterranean halls. His vision for this endeavour was inspired by Thingol's halls at Menegroth in Doriath from the First Age, though it was envisioned to be less expansive. Although dwarves played a role in the initial construction, it remains unclear whether their involvement continued after the establishment of the Woodland Realm in the Second Age, particularly due to the strained relations between the Sindar and dwarves following the slaying of Thingol in the sacking of Doriath. In the autumn of TA 2941, Thorin and company found themselves in Mirkwood with no food left. They attempted to enter some woodland feasts but were repeatedly prevented from doing so. Eventually, Thorin was captured and taken to Thranduil's halls, where he was interrogated by the king. When Thorin refused to answer, Thranduil had him locked in his innermost cell. Later, the 12 remaining dwarves, including Bilbo Baggins, were also taken by the elves and locked into the king's dungeon after facing similar treatment. Meanwhile, Bilbo, wearing the ring, managed to maneuver invisibly through the halls and discover an escape route through the cellars. By a stroke of luck, Bilbo found the keys to the dwarves' cells, freed them, and hid them in empty barrels in the cellar. Workers then rolled the barrels through a trapdoor as part of their routine. In TA 3017, Aragorn captured Gollum in the Dead Marshes and brought him to Thranduil's halls. The Council of Elrond mentioned that Gollum was imprisoned but had been allowed to climb a tree, with guards keeping watch. On June 20th, TA 3018, orcs attacked and Gollum disappeared. During the War of the Ring, Thranduil's realm was invaded, but on March 15, TA 3019, he emerged victorious over the forces of Dol Guldur in the battle under the trees. Following the defeat of Sauron, Thranduil's domain expanded to the mountains of Mirkwood. Himring. The hill known as Himring, located in the northeast of Beleriand, was the site of the fortress of Menegroth, the eldest of the sons of Feanor. Following the drowning of Beleriand at the close of the First Age, the peak of Himring remained above water, becoming known as Tol Himling. The construction of the fortress on Himring occurred when the sons of Feanor journeyed east after Thingol's discovery of the kinslaying. It served as the primary stronghold of Menegroth, who used it to defend the northeastern border area, later recognised as the March of Menegroth. Himring endured the Dagor Bracolach and provided refuge for many survivors from the neighbouring regions, including Maedhros' brother Maglor. It stood for countless years until the Nirnaeth Adonediad, however it is not mentioned in the published Silmarillion thereafter. The implication is that it was abandoned, as the Sons of Feanor likely lacked the resources to maintain it, even if they had chosen to. Following the War of Wrath, only the summit of the hill remained, appearing as a small island on the northwest coast. On the original maps accompanying The Lord of the Rings, it is labelled Himring. It was among the few high points of Beleriand to survive as islands, and was easy to identify, as it depicted on most maps in Middle-earth during the Third Age. Minas Tirith of the First Age. Minas Tirith, once a formidable watchtower and fortress located in the Isle of Tol Sirion, played a crucial role in guarding the pass of Sirion against the forces of Morgoth during the First Age. Constructed by Finrod Falagun in the late First Age to oversee Morgoth's activities in the northern plain of Ardgallen, Minas Tirith was entrusted to Orodreth, Finrod's nephew, who faithfully protected the Vale of Sirion for many centuries. However, in FA 457, Sauron invaded the stronghold following the Dagor Bracolach, leading to Orodreth's retreat to the south. Under Sauron's rule, the island was renamed Tolin Gawroth, and he began breeding and infusing large wolves with evil spirits, creating werewolves. During the quest for the Silmaril, Sauron imprisoned Beren and Finrod in the island, leading to a confrontation with Luthien and the Hound Huan. Ultimately, the Isle was cleansed and Sauron was defeated, resulting in the tower's ruins. Although the Noldor maintained control of the land around the Pass of Sirion for a few more years, they chose not to rebuild Minas Tirith. Gondolin. The beautiful city of Gondolin was a well-hidden sanctuary for the Elves, nestled in the heart of Beleriand in Middle-earth. Turgon the Wise, a revered Noldorin king, established this remarkable city during the First Age. Despite being in exile, Gondolin remained resilient for nearly 4 centuries during the Years of the Sun. The inhabitants of this splendid city were known as the Gondolindrim. According to the Silmarillion, the Valar Ulmo, Lord of Waters, divulged the whereabouts of the Vale of Tumladen to Turgon in a dream around FA 50. Guided by this divine intervention, Turgon journeyed from Nevrast and discovered the Vale in FA 53. Amon Gwared, a steep hill at the centre of the Vale, became the chosen site for the Grand City. Constructed in secrecy over 75 years, Gondolin was completed in FA 116. Turgon then led his people from Nevrast to reside in the hidden city, bringing with him a significant portion of the Noldor and the northern Sindar. Despite attempts to seek aid from the Valar in the west against Morgoth, the city remained isolated, surrounded by its protective mountains. After nearly 4 centuries, the city met its tragic fate when it was betrayed by Morgoth to Maeglin, Turgon's nephew, leading to its eventual ruin. Descriptions of Gondolin portray it as a place of extraordinary beauty, with trees paved from stone, elegant houses, and majestic towers built from white marble. The king's palace and its towering structure were the centerpiece, with fountains and gardens adding to the city's enchanting allure. However, despite its magnificence, Gondolin ultimately succumbed to betrayal and destruction. Menegroth. Menegroth, also known as the Thousand Caves or Caves of Menegroth, stood as the capital city of Doriath during the First Age, housing King Thingol and Queen Melian of the Sindarin people. Menegroth, beautifully adorned, hosted Thingol's throne and served as the place where he delivered his judgments, ultimately meeting his demise in FA 502. The Sons of Feanor claimed the caves in their pursuit of one of the Silmarils before the War of Wrath, leading to the ruins of Doriath. Following the Battle of the Powers, the Teleri sought refuge in havens like Valis or the forests of Region and Neldareth, whilst their leader Elwë, later known as Thingol, disappeared with Melian, only to reappear and urge the construction of a new fortress known as Menegroth of the Thousand Caves. With the aid of the Dwarves of Belagost, the fortress was built into the western wall of a ravine about the river Esgaldwin, featuring numerous caverns and chambers adorned with carvings of beech and trees and birds. Menegroth and Doriath remained isolated due to Thingol's preference for peace and his disapproval of meddling in the affairs of the Noldor, aside from maintaining contact with his kin in Nargothrond. Despite the battles of Beleriand, Thingol abstained from involvement. In the 5th century of the First Age, Beren Akamion requested the hand of Thingol's daughter Luthien in marriage. However, Thingol demanded that Beren retrieve a Silmaril from Morgoth's Iron Crown as a condition for their union. Accompanied by Luthien, Beren succeeded in their quest to Angband but faced the grave consequences. Karkaroth, the wolf guarding the gates of Angband, bit off Beren's hand holding the Silmaril. The wolf then rampaged towards Menegroth but was ultimately confronted and defeated by the courageous Juan, the Great Hound of Valinor, at the northeast banks of Esgalduin. The Silmaril was retrieved, fulfilling Thingol's conditions. Years later, Hurin Thalion presented the renowned Nauglamir to Thingol as a gift. Thingol devised a plan to set the Silmaril into the Nauglamir and offered a reward to the dwarven craftsmen of Nogrod if they could accomplish the task. The dwarves, driven by an intense desire for the Silmaril, completed the work and then claimed the treasure for themselves, ultimately killing Thingol and escaping Menegroth. The news quickly spread, leading to the pursuit and assassination of the dwarves. 2 of them managed to escape and spread false tales of their betrayal and massacre of their brethren by the elves. In retaliation, the dwarves of Nogrod amassed a great army and launched an assault on the unguarded Doriath. This led to the Battle of the Thousand Caves, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. Mablung, the leader of the guard, was killed at the doors of the treasure chamber where the Nauglamir was kept. The dwarves of Nogrod were eventually ambushed at Sarn Athrad, on their way back by the Laquendi, led by Beren. Their king was defeated by Beren in single combat and the rest of their host was taken down by Ents. Nargothrond. The realm of Nargothrond, also known as the Caverns of Narog, was an underground elven stronghold constructed along the banks of the River Nagrod in western Beleriand during the First Age. It was first established and governed by the Noldorian king Finrod Falagun, son of Finarfin. Similar to the intricate structures of many underground dwarven cities, Nargothrond was comprised of extensive networks of caves and tunnels of varying shapes and sizes carved through the rock, possibly limestone. 3 great halls were situated around the other caves and tunnels, likely serving as the seat of the city's ruler. The deepest cave housed the innermost chamber, where Glaurung later hoarded the remaining treasures of Nargothrond. Notably, Luthien resided in a southwestern cave chamber during her time there, and the realm's armories were located in several chambers to the south of the Great Halls. The primary entrance to Nargothrond was through the doors of Felagund, facing the River Narog, leading into a sizable chamber approximately 500 feet from the Great Halls of Felagund. Inspired by Menegroth in Doriath and seeking a concealed refuge from the forces of Morgoth, Finrod established Nargothrond during the early years following the return of the Noldor to Middle-earth, where the caverns of Narog beneath the forested hills of Tar Faroth in the western bank of Narog. The dwarves of Nogrod assisted him and also crafted the Nauglorim for him. However, prior to the establishment of Nargothrond, the caves were inhabited by the petty dwarves, who named it Khazd-dûl before being driven out. Initially, only a narrow path along the riverbanks provided access, but later a bridge was constructed across the Narog. Finrod ruled Nargothrond until he joined Beren on his quest for the Silmaril, thereafter being succeeded by his nephew Orodreth. Notably, the sons of Fëanor, Celagorm and Cerofin, resided in Nargothrond during this time and held significant influence over its populace, instilling fear and distrust of outsiders. Following reports of Finrod's demise, they were exiled in disgrace. Since its establishment by Finrod, the Elves of Nargothrond had engaged in a clandestine war against Morgoth, employing stealth and ambush tactics rather than open warfare. When Turin was led there by Gwyndor, he gained high regard from Orodreth, the king of Nargothrond, and advised a different strategy. Turin Turambar rose to become one of the principal leaders, urging the people to abandon their long-standing reproach and openly confront Morgoth. Turin convinced Orodreth to construct the Bridge of Nargothrond to facilitate swift movement of troops onto the battlefield. Orodreth built the bridge extending from his doors across the Narog and engaged in open warfare against Morgoth. Despite centuries of searching, Morgoth had been unable to locate the stronghold of Nargothrond, but now not only was its whereabouts exposed, but the new bridge also eliminated the protection of the River Narog. Subsequently, Glaurung the dragon was dispatched from Angband with a horde of orcs to seize the city. After the defeat of Nargothrond's army at the Battle of Tumhalad in FA 495, Glaurung and his army advanced south, crossing the bridge, pillaged the city, either killing or enslaving some of its inhabitants. The survivors sought refuge in Doriath, leading to Thingol's awareness of the fall of Nargothrond. Glaurung then established himself as the Dragon King of Nargothrond until FA 499, when he journeyed northeast to Brethil to confront Turin Turambar, who ultimately slew him. Although the realm ceased to exist, Mim the petty dwarf laid claim to the caves and their treasures as recompense for the suffering of his people, until Húrin arrived and killed him for betraying his son. Subsequently, the treasure, including the Nauglamir, were taken by the elf kingdom of Doriath and presented to King Thingol. Eventually the caves were destroyed during the War of Wrath, along with all of Beleriand. Ost-In-Edhil. Ost-In-Edhil served as the thriving capital city of the elven realm of Eregion during the ancient days of the Second Age. The city was established by the Noldor in SA 750, strategically positioned at the convergence of the river Sirannon and the Glanduin. To foster interactions between the dwarves and the elves, the Elven Way was built, extending all the way to the west gate of Khazad-dûm under the watchful gaze of the Misty Mountains. Celebrimbor, the esteemed founder and leader of the Gwaithir Myrdan, and the grandson of Fëanor, governed the city. It was within Ost-In-Edhil that the Noldor crafted the infamous rings of power with knowledge imparted by Sauron, masquerading as Anatar, giver of gifts. Unbeknownst to the Noldor, Celebrimbor foiled Sauron's intricate plan by concealing the rings, steadfastly refusing to surrender them. This led to the conflict known as the War of the Elves and Sauron, resulting in the utter destruction of Ost-In-Edhil by Sauron's forces. Although the city lay in ruins after, its remnants endured into the Third Age. Nearly 3,000 years later, the Fellowship of the Ring stumbled upon the remnants of Ost-In-Edhil as they approached Moria. As they passed through, Legolas discerned an ethereal message seemingly emanating from the stones, lamenting the loss of the elves of Eregion. Deep they delved us, high they built us, fair they wrought us, but they are gone. And so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there is anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the subscribe and like waystones down below. Now Luieg of Vanadvan, until we meet again.